Okay. Well, firstly, thanks to Emrod for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Matt Parks from Atlas Industries. I'm an architect. What I should point out is that I am not a Revit user. Um, so I've recently relocated back to the UK from Vietnam, having spent the last 12 years in Vietnam as the operations director of Atlas. We're a professional services business based in Vietnam, working in the UK and Australia. What I want to talk to you is about some research I've done recently, but before I do that, just very quickly, 3 slides, I promise no more. Who we are. We're 300 plus in Vietnam, servicing London, UK and Australia clients, working on projects around quite a bit of the world. And a lot of our work is BIM enabled. These are some of our clients. Some you will recognize, some are Australian, Hong Kong, Singaporean businesses. What we deliver, we work on projects globally. We're agnostic in our approach in terms of software and processes. We're Vietnam's only authorized Autodesk training center. We're also a Graphisoft training center. We work heavily with Bentley and Tekla systems as well. I think we've got the single largest concentration of Revit users in Vietnam, architects and engineers. The projects I'm showing there are those that I can show. They're all in Australia, but we work on projects of similar scale here in the UK. All 4 of those projects shown. Top left is the Sydney Opera House, the new underground vehicle access pedestrian system, the new 70-storey residential leisure tower on the left, the new Northwest Rail above ground railway stations, and the Perth Kingsbridge were all done in Revit, and Kingsbridge was also done in Tekla, and we also used Dynamo, all hosted in Vietnam off of our servers with our clients accessing the information there. We're in a unique position in that we get to experience the reality of BIM and workflow processes around the world. Every client has a different way of working, different software, different hardware, different modes of collaboration. We've experienced Panzura, we've experienced Talon, both with varying degrees of success. So we, as a business, we see how BIM is being adopted globally, and we often get a lot of clients coming to us asking, how should we do this, how should we do that? In our client base, in Manchester, this is how we do it. In London, this is how we do it. In Sydney, this is how we do it. In Hong Kong, this is how we do it. What about the hardware? What about the software? These are all barriers, cost, etc., to the adoption of BIM. So I thought to myself, well, let's just ask the question. Realistically, I asked them, please select one factor that you believe is the most significant barrier to the successful adoption of BIM workflow processes within your business. Now, let's not get into the debate as to define BIM. Is it PAS 1192 level 2? Is it level 3 aspirational? Is it just 3D modeling? Really, it's about the adoption of BIM authoring software, which it's that adoption by industry which is driving the eventual embracing of PAS 1192 or similar global process. That's what we see happening. So I asked this question, sent it out to our clients, went out to over 80 companies. Fortunately, I had 55 responses. And by location, the majority were from here in the UK. I should say that about 40% of our work client base is in the UK, 40% Australia, the other 20% Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore. 14 responses from Australia, Hong Kong 3, 1 from Singapore, which was a contractor, 4 from Vietnam, 2 from the UAE, and 2 who stated that they were worldwide. Practices with offices UK, Middle East, and Australia, or elsewhere. So really what we wanted to know as a business is just, we sometimes have people saying, oh no, it's too difficult, Talon's not working, or Panzura's too difficult, or the software's too expensive, or we have to change our management processes, or there aren't enough skilled software users, there's no mandate, there's no viable business case to using BIM. And I just thought, well, come on, let's really get to the bottom of it and ask all these clients. So the headlines of the 55 responses, and all I'm going to do now is just take you through the various permutations of responses, and it's purely just for information. and I'll provide some conclusions, what I believe. This isn't Atlas's view, it's my view at the end. So the dominant response was 16 people of the 55 all came back, 30% said no clear mandate from clients. Now, then there's also a group of people saying no mandate from main contractors, two people. Lack of clear government mandate. We had 4 people respond along that line, and they were all UK practices. They weren't Australian, Singaporean, elsewhere practices. So they are questioning the clarity of the government mandate for the PAS 1192 adoption of BIM. You can see there that the second single largest response was lack of software skills. I would question if it's really a software skill item, and I'll come on to my thoughts on that a bit later. There were 10 responses that gave various other reasons, from there's no business case, too costly, I don't know what it is, there is no barrier. And again, I'll leave this with you guys, so it'll be on the website. You're more than welcome to look at it in more detail. So you see there that the issue is most people are saying, or the largest number of responses are saying, no mandate from clients. I then thought to myself, well, hang on, who's that coming from? Because you often get, in our discussions with our clients, and I'm dealing with directors, I'm dealing with project leaders, I'm dealing with the BIM managers, BIM coordinators, and sometimes you get differing views. So if we break it down by the different work headings, so company directors, clearly a large percentage are saying that, again, it's a lack of mandate, and here I've grouped the government client and main contractor mandate together, with, again, the second largest area of response being the lack of software skills. High cost, only one person actually responded, but said that as a reason. Lack of robust collaboration methods was highlighted by 2 people. Now, we often have this flagged as a reason why they don't think BIM can work. And bearing in mind, a lot of our clients are working in the multidisciplinary space, and they're working on projects around the world. So they might have an office in Beijing, talking to an office in Sydney, talking to an office in London. They might be a multi-disc where they've got MEP in Sheffield, structural in Manchester, architectural in London. So I thought there would be more people responding to the issue, saying that the lack of robust collaboration methods. I was actually quite surprised. By project director, and sorry, I should say these are business owners. These are the people that are having to make the decisions as to where do we invest, which software, which hardware, which processes are we adopting. From a project director, architect, engineer perspective, again, the lack of mandate. Now, I began to question here, are they using the lack of mandate as an excuse not to invest, not to change their workflow processes, not to look at recruiting a different skill set into their business? And again, I don't know the answer. Lack of software skills was given by 2 people. Collaboration methods, again, by 2. If we then look at it from a BIM manager, BIM coordinator perspective, sorry guys, how much time? From a BIM manager, BIM director, BIM coordinator perspective, again, lack of mandate from government client, main contractor is given as the principal reason, principal barrier. Lack of software skills, again, 3 people out of that group of 13 responded along those lines. So the conclusions that I drew from that, and again, these are my views, shared in some part by our BIM director based in Saigon. 40% of the respondents cited a lack of mandate of the use of BIM as the single biggest barrier. Of these, the lack of a client mandate was the most prominent, 30%. So we've got the government public sector, and not everybody around the world is working in the public sector space. So you have those businesses that are aligning to work in the public sector. You have a lot of businesses that don't do public sector work. And they're sitting there in this private sector space thinking, well, hang on, do I really need to invest? Do I need to jump on that wagon just yet? I'm not too sure. Government mandate does exist in the UK and Singapore, but I think it's clear that there is still some confusion, both here in the UK. Singapore, because of the nature of government, Singapore is a business. It's an island state, and the government, the whole country is a business. What the government says, everybody does. End of story. And there is a single authority mandating and setting standards. Here in the UK, there are many organisations out there saying this is the way you should use BIM, many organisations pushing their standards, their templates, etc. Australia is being led by industry, not by government. And I've spent the last 3 years, before I relocated back to the UK last September, my last 3 years in Saigon was actually looking after all of our Australian client base. So I had a lot of time in Brisbane, Sydney, Perth, Adelaide, and Melbourne, working on some of those large projects I showed you earlier. And Australia is 6 or 7 countries on one island. And the states, there's a great rivalry between the states. The federal government are not in a position to mandate. They're looking at doing so, but what the message we're getting at the moment is that the Australian adoption of BIM is very much industry-led. And we've seen that in the 70-story tower that I showed you very briefly. The client, right at the top, mandated the use of BIM. They were happy for different consultants to use different platforms, but as long as the end product was a BIM, PIM, fit for purpose, they were happy. If anybody went off the rails, they gave authority to Atlas and the project architects that we were working for to police the BIM execution plan and adherence to it. And we have that also with some of the infrastructure clients in Australia. So slightly different mindset, slightly different way of working. My view here in the UK and what I've seen, and I've only been back in country 8 months, what I feel is lacking here is a private sector regulatory body that can assist in mandating and standardising the adoption of BIM for private sector clients. Private developers, what standards should they be looking to? If they're considering, should I be using the BIM process in my projects? Well, what standards should I be saying my consultants should work to? Is there joined up thinking from the RICS, the RIBA, ICE, CIOB? There's a few people shaking their heads in the room. And I've had a number of commercial architects who've all said they feel that a private sector regulatory body would go a long way to helping the rollout of BIM Level 2, PAS, here in the UK. Some of you, again, this is up for discussion. BIM is seen as more expensive than CAD to clients and consultants. Now, we see completely the opposite. We see if clients come to us asking us to help them deliver projects in 2D CAD, the price goes up. We see that hinders proper coordination. So much coordination is at the 1 to 100, 1 to 50 scale of a project. And BIM allows you to address design issues, eliminate them so much earlier in the process. We all know this, that's why we're in this space now. Also from a software point of view, the software vendors are getting very clever. They're beginning to switch their entire software procurement packages. It's now more affordable, it's more cost effective for consultants to actually acquire the BIM software products than it is the traditional old 2D. And again, bear in mind that there are different methods of licensing. Here in the UK is very different to Australia, very different to Southeast Asia. The Autodesks, the Graphisofts, the Bentleys of this world, they play different systems of software licensing depending on how mature the market is. Systems of collaboration are still in their infancy, and I would say that sometimes they become barriers themselves. Panzura is a very powerful tool. We've seen it used with some success. We've seen it used with not success in other areas. Talon, we've seen varying degrees of success. Sorry? They're accelerators, so they're basically caching. It's a caching technology, be it hardware or software based, that allows BIM models to be virtually accessed from different. Yes, but it's in a way, yeah. Yeah. So, thank you. A lack of software skills is. I don't believe a lack of software skills is really the issue. I honestly believe it's a lack of management understanding of the new processes. Um, you know, the whole industry is having to change in its approach, and I really do believe it's it's management not understanding what it's all about. It's being driven very much by people like yourselves in this room, um, and software vendors, and sometimes the upper management are sort of really struggling. It's like startled rabbits in the headlights. They're struggling to understand how they need to change their business in terms of staffing, in terms of how they tender for projects. So my view would be keep it simple, stupid. And if you look at Kelly Johnson from Skunkworks, you'll understand that stupid is not an insult. A constantly evolving BIM execution plan. We've had projects where we've been told this is it, it's fixed. Now, projects evolve, we all know this, briefs evolve through the project life cycle. So, process at the moment is sometimes actually causing hiccups through a project. So it's very important that the BEP constantly evolves. And to a lot of you in this room, that will be common sense. You know that already. Teamwork, regular communications. For all the collaboration software, hardware technology out there, you cannot beat regular conference calls, Skype chats, etc. And we see a number of businesses where they think by adopting BIM and workflow processes, it's almost like a fire and forget. It's all in the cloud, or we're just exchanging the model. We don't need to talk to people anymore. Of course you do. If anything, you need to talk more earlier in the process to really get the power out of the BIM model. And then BIM, PIM simplicity. Models, volumes, work sets. How you set the models up. We have some clients where we've got a massive block development, all in one model. And the model just falls over. Now, it's about looking at the project. How is it going to be procured? How do you break up the model? How, the volumes, the work sets, etc. So in terms of the survey, those are my conclusions, my comments. I just want to touch two more slides on what we've experienced in terms of trends in BIM adoption. So for us as a business, we've seen the adoption of BIM by our clients increase. Back in 2013, 40% of our clients were using BIM authoring software. We're now moving ahead of 75%, and we're seeing a rapid decline in the use of 2D CAD. Revit, just to give you a feel for what's happening around the world, Revit is overtaking ArchiCAD in Australia. ArchiCAD is more popular in Japan, and interestingly is now taking over from Revit in the Singapore universities. Now this is quite key because Singapore government developed their BIM strategy based around a lot of support from the universities and Autodesk. And the universities have recently decided to, well, Graphisoft have done a very good job and they've persuaded the universities to move back to ArchiCAD. But the point is, and we've experienced this with some of the projects we're doing in Singapore, suddenly the clients are saying, well, hang on, we can't work with you anymore because you don't use Revit. We're like, well, we do. Because you don't use Graphisoft, ArchiCAD. Well, we do, but that's immaterial. It doesn't matter on the software. It's the use of IFC and the management processes. Here in the UK, we see many historic UK microstation practices moving to Revit. Something I thought I would never see from some of the very well known practices. Revit is still confused by many as BIM. We still have clients coming to us, oh, we're doing BIM. Well, what do you mean? Oh, we bought Revit. So then you have a conversation and you try and find out, what do they really understand about BIM. Interestingly, some practices are really going for the agnostic approach. They're maintaining skills in various softwares. Others, we know a number of clients that literally finished work on a Friday on one system, started work on Monday with another system. Massive investment in software, training. They've decided to take it on the chin, the downtime for productivity. A brave move. Software adoption often driving project procurement and delivery processes, driven by software companies and advocates, not necessarily by the business and the project need. We've seen a number of projects where it's been driven down a certain path which hasn't actually benefited the project itself. Revit not seen as an appropriate, and this is feedback from clients I'm giving you here. Revit not seen as an appropriate tool at concept schematic stage. SketchUp and Rhino still dominate this space. However, Dynamo will facilitate Revit's movement into this space. IFC is the way forward, especially for UK practices wishing to work on the international stage. That's it. Thank you very much.